welcome to the MVS Patreon podcast after show. I probably need to change that title. We'll do that at some point. But thank you for joining me. I am here with Leah Driscoll. She is a licensed clinical social worker, health and wellness educator, trainer, and public speaker and musician. You got to check her out on the official podcast episode if you haven't already. But thank you so much, Leah, for joining me for the after show. Jazz hands.
Yay! Happy to be here.
Woohoo! Okay, so this is the time when we ask, silly questions, maybe get a little extra wisdom for our Patreon guests or listeners. You're the guest. My apologies. Okay, so my first question, I guess this isn't too silly, but the first question is, what is the one common myth about your profession or field that you want to debunk?
Oh my God, we're not all crazy. I said we're not all crazy. Yeah, that's probably it. We're not all shrinking heads. Yeah.
Okay, so next question. What would your superhero power be? I feel like this is a tough one.
This is going to sound so selfish, but the ability to diffuse smells. I have a very intense sense of smell. It's a real problem for me.
Oh my gosh. I wonder
it leads
to
a lot of anger and irritability.
Would you have like a superhero cape with this or be invisible?
I think I'd have some sort of like, I'd be like a skunk, but like the antidote for a skunk. Everywhere I go.
Okay, our next question. What have you read or listened to recently that has inspired you?
Oh God, I listen to podcasts ad nauseum. Yeah, so I was just so excited to be on a podcast. What was it? Something or inspired me? What was the first part?
Like, what have you read or listened to?
Okay. This is going to sound really out of left field and such a social worker type thing, but I regularly listen to Dax Shepard's podcast, and he had an interview with a woman named Erin Meyer, who does a lot of research. She works at a school in France, a business school in France. She does a lot of research looking at cultural differences in the workplace. So comparing, and when I talk about culture, I'm talking about national culture. So going in and working for a lot of, as a consultant for a lot of global corporations, and talking about helping them to understand the cultural differences when they start a new branch in a different country. And she was just sharing one particular example of having presented. She's doing a presentation at a Japanese business school. And she got to the end of her presentation, asked if anyone had questions. Nobody had any questions. Not surprising. And I'll explain why not surprising. If you've ever worked with any Japanese students, it's probably not surprising. Her friend was with her colleague, and said, I think there were some questions. And she said, I didn't hear any questions. And the person got up and said, are there any questions? He scanned the room very slowly, made eye contact with somebody, asked the person if they had questions, and they did. And then it kind of went from there. And afterwards, she was telling the story of how, I'm sorry, this is a very long-winded explanation into this, but I just thought it was so lovely. She said, how did you know the person had a question? Nobody raised their hand. And he said, I scanned the room and I looked for somebody who had bright eyes.
Wow.
And she said, bright eyes. And he tried to explain it to her. And, someone whose eyes got wider and made eye contact with him. And so I think she said the next day she was presenting again. And when she asked the question, does anyone have any questions? She looked around the room very slowly, and she noticed a woman who locked eyes with her. And then she said, do you have any questions? And she said, thank you for asking. Yes, I do have questions. And it just I just found it so beautiful, the nuance and how many things we miss in life because we're moving so quickly and we live in such a multicultural, cross-cultural world. And it just really made me think. The podcast interview was really, really interesting. Again, Erin Meyer, and she has a quiz that you can take that basically it asks you a bunch of these cultural questions and will tell you where you kind of align in your country of origin.
Wow.
But I found it fascinating, and I love just talking about multiculturalism in general. But that really, it stuck with me. And then I made everybody I know take the quiz.
Yeah, wow, that's such a good reminder. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna have to, I feel like I need to take that quiz. What's okay, now we're switching gears here. What is something that people think makes them look cool, but actually makes them look ridiculous?
Walking around with an earpiece in their ears.
Yeah, I'm just like, I don't even know what that would be. What's cool anymore? I'm so far from it.
I don't know. I don't see anybody except on Zoom from here up.
What is some good advice that was given to you and has always stayed with you? So this is just from anybody.
The first thing that popped into my head, it was actually my first supervisor at Berkeley. She's the director of the counseling center. And she made a comment to me that she said, she commented on something I often did. I think I still do it to some degree. It's called it's a specific type of defense mechanism called intellectualization, where basically in this context, what I was doing is she noticed I would often accept people's behavior by intellectualizing and justifying why they were doing what they were doing, and really called that out and told me, like that is a way to burn yourself out and to not be true to yourself because you're really justifying people's behavior, and it's okay to really call it out and acknowledge it when people are treating you badly. Wow. So that has that stood out with me the last, God, it's almost been 10 years since she said that. Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's such a good reminder. Wow. Thank you for sharing all of this. We got some juicy stuff for our Patreon people. So thank you so much again for spending time with us. And
it's
for
my
all
pleasure.
of our
it's great.
listeners, like, please come back next month. You're going to love our next guest. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.